Hey everyone, this is Curtis Spivey from Team ABU Games, and today we're going to talk about another bargain budget build. But before we get started, don't forget you can pick up any of the cards you need for this deck and more right at ABU's website at abugames.com. And if you want more MTG strategy videos like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Don't be afraid to ask any questions or hit me up in the comments. Now let's get started on this Gates on a budget build. So, this game deck is already really super budget, but it's almost fully upgraded for everything you could possibly want. Let's go ahead and start with the creatures, which we have 10 of them. Let's go ahead and go over my favorite sheep. It's Gatebreaker Ram. It's 2 colorless and 1 green for a 2/2 sheep, and when it enters the battlefield, it checks and sees how many gates you have, because this is a gate deck, and because our land base is 4 color, this thing is going to be huge for 3 mana, and as long as you have control 2 or more gates, Gatebreaker Ram has Vigilance and Trample. So this thing's huge. It's a 2/2 to start out with, and every gate you play, and you'll notice almost every land of our 27 land deck will be a gate. This thing is just crazy. 3 mana for a 10/10, 9/9, just ends games, being Vigilance and Trample, won't let them chump block their way out of it. This will finish games. The next creature we're going to talk about is Archway Angel. 5 colorless, 1 white. 3/4 Angel, it's flying, and whenever it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life for each gate you control. So more with our gate theme right here. This thing just helps stabilize you versus aggro, or if someone just got you so close to death with the burn decks, this just kind of helps you reach back into the game. 3/4 body, I've actually noticed, isn't bad at all for helping you close out games as well. There's only 2 here in the main, but we'll talk about more in the sideboard later. Our last 4 creatures, and really only 10 we have total, is Gate Colossus. This is an 8 colorless artifact creature construct. It's an 8/8, and this spell costs 1 colorless less to cast for each gate you control. Gate Colossus can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, so it really can't be chump blocked. One of the really good things is you're going to run across a lot of Explore creatures in this standard format, and if they don't hit at least one when you're talking about any of the big Explore creatures on that one, they just won't be able to block. So if you've got the Merfolk, if you see the Merfolk come down early in this deck versus you and you're playing against green-black, you're probably happy to see that, because this deck just does so well versus so many other mid-range decks, because you have so much removal and so much reach. We'll go ahead and talk about that, but the Gate Colossus is just so fantastic. The other great part about it is, whenever a gate enters the battlefield under your control, you may put the Gate Colossus from your graveyard on top of your library. We draw a ton of cards with this deck when it gets going. I don't actually think there's another deck in this format, and being honest, this is really tier 1, and it's funny that it's a budget deck, and really it's built to beat anything and go toe-to-toe even with all the Krasis decks. And that's really the big other creature I'd mention here at the end. If you do have a Krasis, you pulled one in an event, or you just have your set, that's one creature in here you definitely could go ahead and replace. Either a Gatebreaker Ram moved to the side, or a couple Gate Colossus. But that's really the only creature in here if you're thinking about changing this to be non-budget, if you had the Krasis. But everything else, it's already on point and ready to go for you. Now, running 19 spells to help us get to this gate mess. So we've got Growth Spiral, green and a blue, new card from Ravnica Allegiance. It's an instant, and draw a card. You may put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. Now, one of the problems with this deck is you're always playing from a turn behind because the gates come into play tapped. This can actually help you catch up, especially when it comes to aggro, to try to hit that turn 4 route, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But this card's just really good, helps ramp you, draw a card, get that 27 land deck on the board. And then we run into Shimmer of Possibility. This card is 1 colorless and 1 blue sorcery. Look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This is just trying to help some of those fine key parts you need. Maybe you need 1 more creature, maybe you've dug through your deck and it's early. It's just a 2 mana do something, either on turn 3 for you, because most of the time you are playing tap lands for the first couple turns. And top 4 cards is pretty decent. It is another new Ravnica Allegiance. You'll notice this deck really is just shining and showing how many cards from that new set really go into new decks. Next thing, and probably one of the biggest reasons we play this deck that can hold down all those mid-range decks I was talking about, is Gates Ablaze. 2 colorless and 1 red, it's a sorcery. Gates Ablaze deals X damage to each creature, where X is the number of gates you control. If you have 6 gates out, this can just wrap most boards regardless of how big or how late the game's gone. And this can even make sure your Gatebreaker Ram always survives, because this only does damage equal to the amount of gates you have. Gatebreaker Ram's always a 2/2, so whenever you play this, it will always survive because this only does damage equal to it. Now in the mirror, and that's kind of what I've built this version for to fight, because I have noticed a lot of people playing this online. It's not expensive, that's why people are doing it. It doesn't kill the Ram, so do remember that, but there's some other cards I've thrown in to really help combat that. The next thing we have, and getting butchered on this one, Circuitous Route. And this is 3 colorless, 1 green, new ramp spell. Now this is from the first Ravnica block from last year. And search your library for up to 2 basic land cards or gates and put them on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Now, last set there wasn't that many gates or really big payoffs for it, but in this set there is. This is really where you go to 4 mana to 6 to be able to cast your Archway Angel. I mean, there's just so many awesome things about this. And this card really does help if you want to think about it when you go back to the Gate Colossus and you see that 8/8. Whenever each one of those gates comes into play, it costs 1 less. Not only is this ramping you 2, it technically is ramping you 4 to cast that, because it reduces by 2 and gives you 2 more gates the following turn. Can't tell you how many times I've actually played one of the Gate Colossus for free, just because this card ended up putting on enough gates to make that happen. Now, this is a 4 in the deck. It's super good. And one of the reasons that we're running 4, and I'm also running another card to kind of try to reinforce this, is we'll go ahead and jump right over to the 3 Expanse Explosion. This is one of your big finishers if you cannot get to the point where you're laying enough big creatures to hold down the fort. This can just pop your opponent for the X for Explosion and draw a ton of cards, but the expansion side's so good. So for either hybrid blue or red, in one of each, copy target instant or sorcery spell with a converted mana cost of 4 or less. You may choose new targets for that copy. So that's why we're talking about Route, going straight to this for 4 mana. This can copy it, and you can put in 4 gates from it if you have 6 land before you're doing it. So when you ramp, you can ramp like crazy. But the explosion part's really the big one for this. This card's just so flexible and helps you, but the explosion deals X damage to target player and to any target. It does X damage to any target, and target player draws X cards. Now, the kind of rough thing is the double blue, double red, and then X. For most decks, that'd be a problem, but with all the ramp that we have in here, this is going to be able to be cast. I've also tuned the mana base to make sure it's more blue heavy, so you can absolutely still cast this. It's so awesome. You have 3 of it. I would never cut down to any less than that in this deck, because if you need a copy like even a growth spiral early in the game, that's another option that you have. Definitely some really cool figures around that. Now, my last game breaker, I call this game, is Mass Manipulation. I've seen some people running 1 in the sideboard, maybe 1 in the main. I'm running 2 in the main. This card is insane. It's a XX spell and 4 blue, sorcery, gain control of X target creatures and or planeswalkers. So if you just completely cleared the board with maybe a Gates Ablaze before it and they've just rebuilt their board back up, you can just steal their planeswalker, give yourself a blocker, and if you have like 10 mana you can pump into this thing, you're grabbing 3 creatures. It's insane, and honestly, you do need to be really smart when you're searching with your route to make sure that you get the blue-based your blue-based guild gates that you have, because it really is going to make sure that you can cast that. So always count how many blue you have, know if you're getting close. It's also good to just make sure you have at least 2 for Expanse Explosion. Now, we're only running 4 enchantments in here, and we've got the Guildgate. It's called the Guild Summit. It's 2 colorless and 1 blue enchantment, and when Guild Summit enters the battlefield, you may tap any number of untapped gates you control, draw a card for each gate tapped this way. Whenever a gate enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This is your insane draw engine. So if you use any of the spells we just talked about there and you play a gate, you can draw 5 cards. You can empty out your hand. This is such a big help in a ramp deck. So many times in ramp decks in the past, you'll just use everything to ramp and then you have nothing else to do afterward. This lets every single gate that you play after it draw a card. Or if you just draw another one of these and you have to cast it again, you're not only going to draw cards if you have one previously, but if you draw it and you've already played out your gates, you still got to draw cards for the gates you've already played. It's so insane. For 3 mana, it gives you just such reach in drawing cards when it looks like you've run out of gas. Now, we've got 27 lands, and I'll go over them quickly. Let's go ahead and talk about the lands that are not Guild Gates, because that's probably the biggest part. We run 3 non-Guild Gate basic lands. We run 1 island, 2 forest, and then we run 1 specialty land where honestly most of the budget's gone, and if you really couldn't afford to pay for these, or if you're looking at $20 for getting rid of breeding pools, which are a shock land, so it's going to be a forest island, and you can pay 2 life if you don't want it to come into play tapped. But if you pay the 2 life, this will just help you on some turns where you need to hit that number of mana to cast. So we only run 5 non-basics, or 3 basics, and then 1 land that's or the 2 lands that are not a gate. So that's 5 total. So with the 27 lands, the other lands that we have are 3 Azorius Guildgates, blue-white, 1 Boros Guildgate, red-white, 4 Gruul Guildgate, green-red, 4 Izzet Guildgate, blue-red, 2 Selesnya Guildgate, green-white, and 4 Simic Guildgate. Now, the last creature say, well, why isn't this a gate? We didn't really talk about the big last piece in the last 4 up, and that's Plaza of Harmony. And I kind of want to go over this one separately because this card is really insane. When it enters the battlefield, if you control 2 or more gates, you gain 3 life. So instantly against aggro, this can give you a bunch of redraws. If you're literally just a land off from being able to cast Gates Ablaze, this can actually help you stabilize for that 1 turn. For 1 colorless and you tap it, that's all you're going to put in. But if you have any of your gates in play, this thing can tap for any color of a gate you control. Yes, it's not a gate, it's one other one in here that we have. So if you're going to look at that running total, we've got 9 non-gates. I know, super sad, but at some point you got to get some lands coming into play that are not tapped. Now on the sideboard, really just trying to survive and fight in some of the matchups I've seen to be the most difficult. We've got 2 Shivan Fire. This is 1 red, instant. It's got kicker 4. If you just pay for the 1 red, though, you deal 2 damage to target creature. If the spell is kicked, it deals 4 damage to that creature instead. It's versatility because we're a ramp deck, late game, if we need to kill some 4-drops on there, and there is plenty in that, so we're looking at you evil drakes. We can help take one down. Now, for all those people thinking they're going to play Turbo Fog and just smash you, because that's a problem I've had, in best of 3s, you may even consider going up to 4 on this one. In best of 1s, I've had at least 1 in the main board for it, and this is Cindervines. It's a green-red spell, so 1 of each, enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, Cindervine deals 1 damage to that player. And then for 1 colorless, sacrifice Cindervines, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Cindervines deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. Awesome card. Running 3 of it helps against any of those combo matchups you go against, and if you destroy artifact or enchantment, got instant removal here. Again, drakes are evil, so we're going to play 2 Lava Coil on the sideboard, 1 colorless, 1 red, sorcery. Lava Coil deals 4 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Also good versus the Golgari decks, and now Sultai and removing, so they can't keep bringing that back. Running 3 negates, just need to be able to counter anything that's non-creature related, 1 colorless, 1 blue. Running 2 Root Snare, that's 1 colorless and 1 green instant, prevents all combat damage. Once again, those crazy hasty decks have any of the Gruul ones where they're smashing you, or just anything white or white aggro-ish, this will give you just an extra turn where you really need to clear the board. Running 1 Crushing Canopy, card's insane right now, it's 2 colorless and 1 green instant. Choose 1, destroy target creature of flying, or destroy target enchantment. Flexibility is everything. And to round up our full 75 and 15 card sideboard, 2 more Archway Angel, deal against aggro. You can definitely cut some other spells in the deck, like if you don't feel that you need to find this, and just put this in your deck. Having 4 of these, I've gained 20 life where the opponent had me to 2. It's such an awesome piece. Now, alright everybody, well that's it for another bargain budget build. Once again, I'm Curtis Spivey from Team ABU Games. Feel free to hit me up in the comments if you have any questions. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button for more awesome MTG content. And don't forget to check out abugames.com for all your Magic needs.